Who do you think you are looking at? Get me your manager immediately. This service is unacceptable.
I heard every word he said about me, and he had no idea I understood. I stood there at that polished marble table, holding my notepad with trembling fingers, pretending I didn't speak Arabic while this man in his $1,000 suit tore me apart in a language he thought was his secret weapon. My name is Sofia, and 3 months ago, I was teaching literature at a university in Beirut. Today, I was wiping down tables at the Sterling, the most expensive restaurant in the city, wearing a black apron that still smelled like someone else's shift, trying not to cry, while a billionaire called me worthless. But let me take you back, because you need to understand how I got here. Standing in front of Gabriel Hassan and his 3 business partners, my heart pounding so hard, I thought it might burst right through my chest. Hey friends, thank you so much for stopping by. Don't forget to comment where you are watching from. Someone close to you might be watching too. Like, share, subscribe, and tap the notification bell so you never miss a story. Make sure to watch till the very end, because the final twist is something you definitely don't want to miss. So let's continue. The morning started like every morning since I'd arrived in this cold, unforgiving city. My alarm screamed at 4:30. I dragged myself out of the mattress on the floor of the room I shared with 2 other girls, both of them snoring softly in the darkness. The bathroom was freezing. The shower was broken again. I washed my face in the sink with water so cold it felt like tiny knives against my skin. I pulled on my uniform, the same black pants and white shirt I'd washed in the sink the night before, still slightly damp. My reflection in the cracked mirror showed a girl I barely recognized anymore. Dark circles under my eyes, hair pulled back so tight it gave me a headache, but I smiled at myself anyway, practicing the smile I'd need to wear for the next 12 hours. The bus ride took 40 minutes. I watched the city wake up through dirty windows. All those people heading to jobs they probably hated too, but at least their jobs didn't require them to smile while being treated like furniture. I got to the Sterling at 6. My manager, a thin woman named Diane with lips permanently pressed into a line of disappointment, was already there, arms crossed, checking her watch. "You're 2 minutes late," she said. I wasn't. I was 3 minutes early. But I just nodded, mumbled an apology, and headed to the staff room to clock in. The Sterling wasn't just any restaurant. It was the kind of place where people spent more on one meal than I made in a month. Crystal chandeliers hung from ceilings painted with clouds and angels. The floors were so shiny you could see your reflection. Every table had fresh roses that got replaced twice a day. I spent the first 3 hours of my shift doing the work nobody else wanted to do, polishing silverware until my fingers cramped, folding napkins into shapes that looked like swans, refilling salt shakers 1 grain at a time, it felt like. Then the lunch rush started. That's when Gabriel Hassan walked in. I noticed him immediately. Everyone did. He moved through the restaurant like he owned it, which, I found out later, he partially did. Tall, probably over 6 feet, with dark hair styled perfectly and a jawline sharp enough to cut glass. His suit probably cost more than my entire year's salary. 3 men followed behind him, all dressed almost as expensively, all laughing at something he'd said. Diane practically ran over to greet them. She seated them at the best table, right by the window overlooking the river, sunlight pouring in like they'd ordered it specially. "Sofia," Diane snapped her fingers at me. "Table 7. Don't mess this up." My stomach dropped. Table 7. Gabriel Hassan's table. I grabbed my notepad, took a deep breath, and walked over. My hands were already sweating. "Good afternoon, gentlemen," I said, my voice steady despite the fear crawling up my throat. "My name is Sofia, and I'll be taking care of you today. Can I start you off with something to drink?" Gabriel didn't even look at me. He was scrolling through his phone, his attention a million miles away. One of the other men, older, with gray at his temples, ordered sparkling water. Another wanted scotch, even though it was barely noon. The third asked for coffee, black. I wrote everything down, my pen shaking slightly. "And for you, sir?" I asked Gabriel. He glanced up for half a second. His eyes passed over me like I was a smudge on the window, something barely worth acknowledging. "Espresso," he said. Then he returned to his phone. I nodded and turned to leave. That's when I heard it. He spoke in Arabic, rapid and casual, to the man sitting across from him. The words flowed out smooth and natural, the way people talk when they think nobody's listening. "Look at her," Gabriel said. His voice, dripping with contempt. Probably can't even spell her own name. These people come here thinking they can just work any job, but they don't understand what real work is. No education, no class, nothing. The other man laughed. "You think she even graduated high school?" "Doubtful," Gabriel replied. "She probably sends money back to whatever tiny village she crawled out of." Sad, really. But that's the world. Some people are meant to serve, and some are meant to be served. My feet stopped moving. Every muscle in my body went rigid. I stood there, my back to them, my notepad clutched so tight the spiral was digging into my palm. Nobody had spoken to me in Arabic since I'd arrived in this city 3 months ago. Nobody knew I spoke it. Nobody knew that I'd spent 5 years teaching Arabic literature at the American University of Beirut. Nobody knew that I could recite poetry in classical Arabic, that I'd written my thesis on pre-Islamic oral traditions, that my students used to call me Dr. Sofia with respect in their voices. Nobody knew any of that because nobody had bothered to ask. I turned around slowly. Gabriel was still looking at his phone. The other men were looking at menus. None of them had any idea that I'd understood every single word. Something inside me cracked. Not broke, cracked, like ice on a lake, just before it shatters completely. I smiled, the same professional smile I'd been wearing all morning, and walked back to the kitchen. My hand shook as I entered the drink orders into the system. Another waitress, Kelly, noticed. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded, not trusting my voice. The drinks came up fast. I loaded them onto a tray, my mind spinning, my heart racing with something I couldn't quite name yet. Anger, yes, but also something else, something sharper. I carried the tray back to table 7. I set down the sparkling water, the scotch, the black coffee, and finally, the espresso in front of Gabriel. "Is there anything else I can get for you, gentlemen?" I asked in English, my accent carefully neutral. Gabriel waved his hand dismissively, still not looking at me. The men started talking business, numbers and deals and mergers, the kind of conversation that happens in restaurants like this every day. I walked away, but I didn't go far. I stood at the server station, pretending to organize menus, listening. Gabriel switched between English and Arabic depending on what he was saying. When he talked about business, he used English. When he made comments about people, about the staff, about anyone he considered beneath him, he used Arabic, his secret language, his shield. "The girl who brought our drinks," he said in Arabic, laughing. "Did you see her hands shaking? Terrified. They always are. They know they're completely replaceable." The crack inside me spread wider. 15 minutes later, Diane told me to take their food orders. I approached the table again, notepad ready, smile fixed in place. "Are you gentlemen ready to order?" I asked. This time Gabriel looked directly at me. His eyes were dark brown, almost black, and completely cold. He looked at me the way you'd look at a stain on your shoe. "Finally," he said in English, "we've been ready for 10 minutes. Where have you been?" It had been exactly 6 minutes since I'd brought their drinks. I knew because I'd been watching the clock, watching them, listening to every word. "I apologize for the wait, sir," I said, my voice even. "What can I get for you?" He ordered the most expensive steak on the menu, medium rare, with sides that came separately and cost $40 each. The other men ordered similarly. I wrote everything down, repeated it back to confirm, and started to leave. "Wait," Gabriel said. I turned back. "This better be perfect," he said in English. Then in Arabic to his friends, "I swear, if this idiot messes up my order, I'm going to make sure she gets fired. These people need to learn that working here is a privilege, not a right." The ice inside me didn't just crack anymore. It shattered. I stood there, looking at him, really looking at him, and something shifted in my chest, a decision forming, crystallizing, becoming solid and real. "Of course, sir," I said in English. "I'll make sure everything is perfect." I walked to the kitchen, entered their orders, and leaned against the cold stainless steel counter. Kelly came up beside me. "That table giving you trouble?" "You have no idea," I whispered. "Rich people are the worst," she said. "They think their money means they can treat us however they want." She had no idea how right she was. The food took 30 minutes to prepare. 30 minutes of me watching table 7 through the small window in the kitchen door. 30 minutes of Gabriel laughing with his friends, making deals, talking in Arabic about people he considered beneath him. 30 minutes of me deciding what to do next. When the food was ready, I loaded it onto a large tray. 4 steaks, perfectly cooked. Sides arranged beautifully. Everything exactly as ordered. I carried it out, walking carefully across that shiny floor, past tables full of people who didn't even glance at me, invisible in my black apron and white shirt. I set down the plates one by one. The older man's ribeye, the second man's filet, the third man's New York strip, and finally, Gabriel's steak, medium rare, bleeding slightly onto the white plate. "Enjoy your meal, gentlemen," I said. Gabriel cut into his steak immediately. He didn't say thank you, didn't acknowledge me at all. I walked away and waited. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Then I heard it. Gabriel's voice, sharp and angry, cutting through the quiet murmur of the restaurant. "Excuse me, excuse me." I turned. He was holding up his hand, snapping his fingers at me like I was a dog. I walked over, my heart pounding, my hand steady now. "Yes, sir?" I asked. "Is something wrong?" "Wrong?" His face was red. "This steak is completely overcooked. I ordered medium rare. This is medium well at least. Do you even know what medium rare means?" I looked at the steak. It was perfect, exactly as he'd ordered. Pink in the middle, warm throughout, cooked precisely to medium rare standards. But he needed something to complain about. He needed to feel superior. He needed to remind everyone at this table, and me, and himself, that he was important and I was nothing. "I apologize, sir," I said. "I'll have them make you a new one right away." "You'll have them make me a new one?" He switched to Arabic, his voice loud enough that people at nearby tables turned to look. "You'll have them? You don't have anyone do anything. You're a waitress. You're nobody. You're less than nobody. You're just a girl who couldn't make it in whatever backwards place you came from, so now you're here, screwing up orders and wasting my time." The entire restaurant had gone quiet. Diane was speed-walking over, her face pale with panic. Gabriel continued in Arabic, his voice rising. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. These people come here with no skills, no education, nothing to offer, and they expect us to just accept their incompetence. Well, I won't. I refuse to accept this level of service." He turned to Diane. "I want her fired. Right now. I want her removed from this restaurant immediately." Diane looked at me, then at Gabriel, her face torn between fear of losing a wealthy customer and something that might have been sympathy. "Sir, I'm sure we can resolve this," Diane started. "I don't want it resolved," Gabriel said in English. "I want her gone." This was it. This was the moment. I could feel every eye in the restaurant on me. I could see the other waitresses watching from the kitchen door. I could hear my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. I looked at Gabriel Hassan, this billionaire in his expensive suit who thought he could destroy me with a language I supposedly didn't understand, and I made my choice. I smiled. Not a professional smile, not a fake smile, a real smile. Then I spoke. In perfect, fluent, classical Arabic. "I must apologize, sir," I said, my accent placing me immediately as educated, upper class, someone who had studied the language formally. "But I couldn't help but overhear your conversation, and I feel I should clarify a few things." Gabriel's face went white. The other men at the table froze, their forks halfway to their mouths. The entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath. I continued, my voice steady, each word chosen carefully. First, the steak is cooked exactly as you ordered it, medium rare. Perhaps your palate is not as refined as you believe it to be. Second, I graduated with honors from the American University of Beirut, where I spent 5 years teaching Arabic literature before political violence made it impossible for me to stay. Third, I speak 4 languages fluently: Arabic, English, French, and Spanish. How many do you speak? Gabriel's mouth opened, but no sound came out. And finally, I said, switching back to English so everyone in the restaurant could understand, I heard every single word you said about me, every insult, every cruel comment. Every time you called me worthless, uneducated, less than nothing. I understood all of it. The silence in the restaurant was absolute. You used Arabic like a shield, I continued. My voice stronger now, louder. You thought it made you safe. You thought it gave you permission to say whatever you wanted because the poor, stupid waitress couldn't possibly understand. But here's what you didn't understand, sir. You don't know anything about me. You don't know my story. You don't know what I've survived or what I've sacrificed or why I'm standing here in this restaurant serving you instead of standing in front of a classroom teaching students who actually respected me. Gabriel's face had gone from white to red. He stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. How dare you, he said, his voice shaking. How dare you speak to me like this? How dare I? I laughed, and it came out sharp and bitter. How dare you? You sit here in your expensive suit at your expensive table in your expensive life, and you think that gives you the right to treat people like garbage? You think money means you're better than everyone else? Well, let me tell you something about worth, Mr. Hassan. I was breaking every rule. I was destroying any chance I had of keeping this job. But I didn't care anymore. The dam had broken, and everything was pouring out. Worth isn't measured in dollars, I said. It's measured in how you treat people who can't do anything for you. It's measured in kindness and respect and basic human decency. And by those measurements, sir, you're bankrupt. Diane was beside me now, her hand on my arm. Sofia, maybe you should. I quit, I said, cutting her off. I untied my apron and set it on the table, right next to Gabriel's perfect medium-rare steak. I quit because I refuse to work in a place where I'm expected to smile while being degraded. I refuse to pretend I don't understand when people insult me. And I refuse to let anyone, no matter how much money they have, make me feel worthless. I turned to leave. Wait, a voice said. Not Gabriel, one of the other men at the table, the older one with gray at his temples. I stopped. He stood up slowly, looking at Gabriel, then at me. You taught at AUB? He asked in Arabic. For 5 years, I replied in the same language. Arabic literature, classical and modern. He nodded slowly. Then he turned to Gabriel. Do you know who I am? He asked me in English. No, sir. My name is Richard Klein. I own Klein Industries. We manufacture medical devices. He paused. We also have offices in 6 countries, including 3 Arabic-speaking nations. We've been struggling for 2 years to find qualified people who can handle both the technical aspects of our business and the cultural nuances of working in the Middle East. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. I'm looking for a director of Middle Eastern operations, he said. Someone who speaks the language, understands the culture, and has the spine to handle difficult situations. He held out the card. Call my office Monday morning. I stared at the card, not moving. Take it, he said gently. Please. I took it. My hands were shaking again, but for a completely different reason now. Richard Klein looked at Gabriel. I've known you for 10 years, Gabriel. I've watched you build an empire. But today I watched you tear down a woman who did nothing but her job. Today I watched you use your wealth and power as an excuse for cruelty. He picked up his napkin and set it on the table. I'm leaving. And I'm withdrawing Klein Industries from our joint venture. I don't do business with people who treat others like this. He walked out. The third man at the table, the one who'd been silent this whole time, stood up too. I think I'll join him, he said. He nodded at me respectfully and left. Gabriel stood there, surrounded by plates of expensive food nobody was eating anymore, his face a mask of shock and rage, and something that might have been shame. You just cost me millions, he said to me, his voice low and dangerous. No, I said, you cost yourself millions. I just spoke the truth. I walked out of the Sterling with my head high. Richard Klein's business card clutched in my hand, and I didn't look back. The street outside was bright and loud and overwhelming. I stood on the sidewalk, blinking in the sunlight, trying to process what had just happened. My phone buzzed. A text from Kelly. That was amazing. You're a legend. Also, Diane wants you to know you're not fired because you quit first. I laughed, a real laugh, the first one in months. I walked to the bus stop, but I didn't feel like sitting. I paced back and forth, energy coursing through me, my heart still racing. A black car pulled up to the curb. The window rolled down. It was Gabriel. My stomach dropped. He looked at me for a long moment. His eyes were different now, smaller somehow, less certain. Get in, he said. Absolutely not. Please. The word seemed to physically hurt him. Just let me talk. 5 minutes. Every instinct told me to walk away. But curiosity, that dangerous thing, made me stay. You can talk from there, I said, keeping my distance. He sighed. I'm sorry. I waited. I'm sorry for what I said. All of it. I was. He struggled with the words. I was showing off. For my colleagues. Trying to seem powerful and important. And I used you to do it. That was wrong. Yes, I said. It was. I grew up poor, he said quietly. In a tiny apartment with 7 people. We had nothing. I learned Arabic from my grandmother because it was the only language she spoke. She cleaned houses for rich people. She came home every night exhausted and talked about how they treated her like she was invisible. He looked at me. I swore I'd never be like her. I'd never be the person people looked through. And somewhere along the way, I became exactly the kind of person who made her invisible. I didn't say anything. I don't expect you to forgive me, he said. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that Richard was right. I was cruel, and you were brave. And I'll remember this day for the rest of my life. He rolled up the window and drove away. I stood there watching the car disappear into traffic. Monday morning, I called Richard Klein's office wearing the one professional outfit I owned. His secretary answered. Mr. Klein is expecting your call, she said. Can you come in at 2? I could. The interview lasted 3 hours. We spoke in English, Arabic, and French. He asked about my teaching, my research, my understanding of Middle Eastern business culture. He asked what I knew about medical devices, nothing, and whether I was willing to learn everything. At the end, he offered me the job. Director of Middle Eastern Operations. A salary that made my head spin. An apartment. Health insurance. A relocation bonus. Why me? I asked. Because you didn't just speak the language, he said. You spoke truth to power. And that's the rarest skill of all. I started 2 weeks later. The office was glass and steel and views of the river. I had my own desk, my own computer, my own nameplate. Sofia Mansour, Director of Middle Eastern Operations. My first project was opening a new facility in Dubai. My second was hiring a team of translators and cultural consultants. My third was developing training materials for American employees working abroad. I threw myself into the work with everything I had. 12-hour days, weekends, learning medical terminology and business practices and international regulations. 6 months in, Richard called me into his office. There's someone here to see you, he said. I walked into the conference room. Gabriel Hassan stood by the window. I stopped in the doorway. I'll leave you two alone. Richard said, closing the door behind him. Silence stretched between us. I didn't know you'd be here, Gabriel said finally. Richard set this up. Why? Because I asked him to. Gabriel turned to face me. I've spent the last 6 months trying to figure out how to apologize to you properly, how to make things right. And I realized I couldn't. There's no making it right. But I could at least try to do better. He pulled out a folder and set it on the conference table. I established a scholarship fund, he said, for refugees and displaced professionals who need help restarting their careers. Legal fees, credential transfers, job placement. It's called the Sofia Mansour Scholarship. I stared at the folder. I wanted to name it after my grandmother, he continued. But she cleaned houses her whole life in silence. You spoke up. Your voice should be the one that echoes. I picked up the folder. It was real. Legal documents, a foundation, money set aside, real help for people like me. This doesn't erase what I said, Gabriel continued. It doesn't make us even, but maybe it means that something good came from that terrible day. Maybe it means I learned something. I looked at him, really looked at him. He seemed smaller than I remembered, more human. Thank you, I said quietly. He nodded and turned to leave. Gabriel, I said. He stopped. Your grandmother would be proud that you remembered her. Not proud of who you were that day, but proud that you're trying to change. His eyes got bright. He nodded again, not trusting his voice, and left. I sat down at the conference table and opened the folder. The first scholarship recipient was a Syrian doctor now working as a janitor. The second was an Iraqi engineer driving a taxi. The third was a Lebanese teacher cleaning houses. Just like I had been. Just like Gabriel's grandmother had been. I called Richard Klein. I want to be on the selection committee for the scholarships, I said. I was hoping you'd say that, he replied. That was 3 years ago. Today, I'm still director of Middle Eastern operations at Klein Industries. We've opened 4 facilities in the Gulf states and 2 in North Africa. We've hired 147 people. We've trained over 1,000 more. The Sofia Mansour Scholarship has helped 63 people restart their professional lives. And every single day, I walk into my office with its river view and its glass walls, and I remember standing in the Sterling with trembling hands and a breaking heart, listening to a billionaire call me worthless in a language he thought I didn't understand. I remember the exact moment I decided to speak. And I remember that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to stay silent when someone expects you to disappear. Because I heard every word he said about me. And I made sure he heard every word I said back. Dear friends, what you just saw is only one part of the bigger picture. In the next video, I'll reveal the twist no one saw coming, so make sure you're here when it drops. I would love to know what you would have done in this situation. Drop your thoughts below. I'll be reading every single comment. Thank you so much for watching. I love you so much. And don't forget to give this video a like, hit the subscribe button, and share with someone who needs to hear it.